affects the entire region, and the more information that we have relative to this matter, the more public input that we have, the better off we're going to be in terms of protecting our environment and keeping our neighborhoods safe. But I do want to note that one important thing that we start off on the right note is that I want to thank my colleague, Representative Bruce Long, for donating the Dell's Lemonade from Rhode Island, a natural product, all natural. It's also a good opportunity to promote Rhode Island businesses that are truly good for the environment. I also want to thank Senator Felag, who's also very strong on this issue. Senator Felag. And I represent North Tiverton, Warren. He represents Warren and also part of Bristol. So this affects his district as well. First of all, our program for tonight is we're going to try to first have 5 public speakers here that represent 5 different agencies, 3 Rhode Island state government agencies and 2 federal agencies that will give us some perspective as to what their role is relative to the liquefied natural gas project that's being considered in Fall River and Somerset. They'll each have a chance to speak and talk about what their role is in this entire process. And then after everyone's had a chance to speak, then we're going to entertain questions. And I'm willing to stay here as long as necessary to be able to get those questions answered, or at least give everyone a chance to have some public comment relative to your concerns on this project. So that's our goal for tonight. And before we begin, I want to iterate that I want to thank all the members here for coming to this informational meeting. This is some of them are taking their own time to be here at night to come down to Tiverton to speak about this particular issue. I understand there are some very strong emotions, and I spoke to most of you outside about this particular issue, but I just hope that throughout the course of this meeting that we can be respectful of one another's opinions and also be respectful of the members that are given maybe an opinion that might be contrary to what you might believe. If we follow those basic rules, then everyone will have an opportunity to be heard and to at least be respected for the opinion they might have or the question they might come up with. So if we follow those ground rules, I think we're all going to be in great shape in terms of getting a lot out of this meeting. First, let me just introduce the folks that are at the head table that are going to give us some information regarding this proposal. First, I'd like to introduce Rich McGuire from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Then Captain Landry from the U.S. Coast Guard. We have Ron Gagnon, who's the Chief in Technical and Customer Assistance for the Department of Environmental Management for the state of Rhode Island. Also from Rhode Island, the delegate from the Coastal Resource Management Council, CRMC, Dan Boulette. And from the Rhode Island Economic Development Corporation, John Riondo. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. First, we'd like to begin with perhaps a brief overview and a presentation relative to the project in Fall River, and that would be by Rich McGuire of FERC. Rich?
Okay, thanks.
I might use the microphone. I think if you use it, it might be better.
Okay. I won't have the trouble you were having? Or?
I don't think so. Try it now.
Okay. Ron? Okay. Well, good evening. Again, my name is Rich McGuire, and we appreciate being invited to participate in this meeting. I represent the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission out of Washington, and I myself am on staff with the Commission as an environmental project manager. I thought that I would briefly go over the FERC process in reviewing the Weaver's Cove project, and then briefly go over the project itself. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, their mission of the FERC is to regulate and oversee energy industries in the economic and environmental interests of the American public. The FERC is an independent agency that regulates interstate transmission of natural gas, oil, and electricity. The commission is made up of up to 5 commissioners. Currently, we have 4 commissioners. Those commissioners are appointed by the president for a 5-year term, and they're approved by Congress. I myself am just commission staff, and my role is to advise the commissioners in their decision-making process. When a natural gas company is interested in building natural gas facilities for interstate commerce, they file an application with FERC, and in this case, Weaver's Cove filed their application in December 19th, 2003. The commission will make a decision whether or not to approve or deny approval of a project after considering the project's environmental aspects as well as the non-environmental aspects of the project. That would include marketing, the rates, and economic interests of the project. In the case of the environmental analysis, the Commission is doing an environmental impact statement, which many of you may have heard of. That's the EIS. That's an analysis that's done to satisfy the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act, and the EIS is an element of the Commission's review of a project, just one aspect of their review. The EIS is not a decision document, and the FERC will use the EIS as part of its approval process. And in this case, for this project, the Commission, the FERC, is the lead federal agency in preparing the NEPA document, this EIS. There's the cooperating agencies that are assisting the Commission in doing that. As far as the federal agencies are the Coast Guard, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Army Corps of Engineers. The EIS is prepared by the Commission staff, that would be me as well as our colleagues and my colleagues, and it will be prepared to evaluate the environmental impacts of the proposed project. The EIS will address alternatives, the social economic effects of the project, and the environmental aspects of the project. The EIS will be sent out to all parties on our mailing list. The mailing list is an ever-evolving list. It begins with the affected landowners, state, federal, local representatives at the site, and all the resource agencies. It goes to libraries, newspapers that are on our mailing list. But if you are not currently on our mailing list, or you're not sure if you're on our mailing list, and you'd be interested in receiving the NEPA document, the EIS, I encourage you to sign up on our mailing list after the meeting. See either myself or with me tonight is Larry Brown over here, and he's with the Natural Resource Group, which is the environmental consulting firm that's assisting the Commission in preparing the NEPA document. In addition to the cooperating agencies, the federal agencies, we've also been working for the last year. We started last May with getting agency involvement. We began May 2nd of 2003, meeting with the state agencies that included the Rhode Island Coastal Resource Management Council, is that correct? The Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, and the Massachusetts departments that would include the Department of Environmental Protection, the Coastal Zone Management for Massachusetts, and the Division of Marine Fisheries, among other agencies. Let me briefly explain the history of where the process is going. Like I said, we began what we call scoping. That's when we begin to identify issues of the project. That began last May. The company requested that FERC they requested to participate in a pre-filing process before the application is filed. That was in the spring of last year. We began agency involvement on May 2nd. We issued a notice of intent to prepare an environmental impact statement July 11th, 2003, conducted a scoping meeting and site visit July 29th of last year, trying to get familiar and explain our process, as well as begin to understand the issues as we heard at that scoping meeting. Then we began, we have sent out, since that time, we've sent out draft data requests to the company. We've been conducting analysis in-house at FERC and coordinating with the various agencies in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. The next stage in our process will be to issue a draft document, a draft environmental impact statement. We will have meetings on that draft, and then we will eventually issue a final environmental impact statement beneath the document. Again, the EIS is not a decision-making document, so when you see the document, that's not the decision that the FERC's making. That will be presented to our commissioners in their decision-making process. The FERC is, I should probably say that the FERC is a process advocate. We're here to process the application. We're not a project advocate. We're not here to promote the project. Let me just briefly go over the project, the Weavers Cove liquid and natural gas project. It's an import terminal. Currently, the commission, under the commission's jurisdiction, we have 4 LNG terminals, import terminals in the United States. One of those is in Massachusetts, in Boston. There's one in outside of Savannah, Elba Island project. There's one in Maryland, that's the Cove Point project, and one down in Louisiana, the trunk line. Those are the 4 import terminals under the Commission's jurisdiction. We also have 14 peak shaving facilities that are under our jurisdiction, but those are not import terminals. We're currently reviewing 13 new LNG proposals, and they're in various stages of our review. The Weavers Cove project, which is proposed for Fall River, Massachusetts, at a site that was previously a Shell petroleum product site. It's a approximately 73-acre site. The project itself includes a pier and unloading facility, a marine terminal that's capable of receiving LNG tankers with a capacity of up to 145,000 cubic meters. To give you an idea of the size of that, that would be roughly 3 football fields long would be the size of these tankers. There's one LNG storage tank with a capacity of 200,000 cubic meters. The tank is a full containment tank, which means there's two layers. So there's an inner layer and an outer layer of that tank to contain the liquid. It's size-wise, it has a diameter of 280 feet and a height of 195 feet. The insulated tank is designed to store LNG at a temperature of minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit. The project includes 4 Shell and 2 vaporizers supplied by 12 natural gas-fired heaters. The project includes 4 truck loading stations to deliver LNG and other storage facilities, 2 other storage facilities in the northeast United States, the New England area. The project would include administrative and support buildings. It also includes 2 24-inch diameter pipelines. One of those is a 2.5-mile long pipeline that goes from the site in Fall River across the river and through Somerset. That's a 2.5 mile long pipeline. It also includes a 3.6 mile pipeline that goes north of the site to also interconnect. Both pipelines interconnect with Algonquin Gas transmission pipeline system. And that includes 2 meter sites. Both of those meter sites would be at the end of the pipeline. As I said, the LNG terminal would be located at a 73-acre site on the Tiverton River and Fall River. The site was formerly used as an oil refinery, marine import terminal for petroleum products.
It wasn't a refinery.
Okay? Did everyone hear that? It's not a refinery? The riverfront area of the site is a designated port area as defined by the Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management Plan. The site would require maintenance and improvement dredging of approximately 70 miles of the federal channel within Mount Hope Bay and the Tiverton River. And the total volume of the dredge is estimated at 2.5 million cubic yards. Weaver's Cove plans to reuse the dredge material at the terminal site as general fill material on the site itself. And as far as the ship channel, Weaver's Cove anticipates approximately 50 to 70 ships per year, so essentially 1 per week. Let me just end my discussion before I pass the microphone on to explain the opportunities for public involvement from this point on. As far as the FERC process, we will issue a notice of availability of the draft EIS. That will be a formal notice that will go out, and the draft EIS will go out to all individuals on our mailing list. And currently we have some 2,000 parties, interested parties or stakeholders on our mailing list, approximately. There will be public meetings on the draft EIS. We anticipate one of those meetings will be in the Fall River area. We are now anticipating, because of the interest in Rhode Island, that we will have an additional public scope or public comment meeting on the draft EIS in Rhode Island itself. The other FERC process will be that once the Commission issues an order decision on the process, there's a comment period during that time as well. As far as public input, we would encourage you to file comments on the adequacy of the draft EIS. You can also file comments with the Commission now. You can still do that now. If you need information on how to file comments, where to file comments, I'd encourage you to either look at our website, that's www.ferc.com, or we have information .gov, I'm sorry, thank you. Or we have information with us today, a packet that we issued in December 31st, a follow-up notice from our notice last July. And then you can also attend public meetings to give comments on the draft EIS once we have those meetings. So those are some of the opportunities that you can still participate in as far as public involvement in the FERC process. Thank you.
I think one of the concerns that people have, particularly in our region, is the issue of using these tankers, which are 3 football fields in length, to go through the federal channel, and in particular how it might affect the closing of bridges and other vital transportation segues into, particularly in our area where we live, in Tiverton and Portsmouth, to get to Providence. It's the most readily accessible route, and that's certainly one of the concerns that many residents have voiced tonight, have voiced to me. And what I'd like at this time is to present Captain Landry, who's going to talk about the federal channel and the accessibility of these tankers potentially in our bay. Captain Landry.
Thank you very much. As I was introduced, I'm Captain Mary Landry. Let me give you a little background about my role. My my position, what our area of jurisdiction is. I'll talk a little bit about our work that we have done for years in the safety arena, and then I'll bring you up to date on the most current issues at hand that seem to be on people's minds, and that's the arena of port security. I'm basically I have a couple titles called Captain of the Port, Federal Maritime Security Coordinator is the newest title since 9/11. I'm the officer in charge of marine inspection, and I'm also the Federal on-sea coordinator. My area of jurisdiction is all of Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts, so obviously Narragansett Bay, Mount Hope Bay, these are my areas of jurisdiction. This is a side of the Coast Guard that people are not as familiar with. You are used to seeing the SAR boats out there doing the search and rescue cases. You're used to the helicopters and things like that. The field I'm in is called the Marine Safety Field. It's been around for years, but we kind of do our work behind the scenes. So it's not a field that people are as familiar with, but you're obviously becoming familiar with our role since 9/11, and certainly when we get involved in projects like these. As was explained by the FERC, we are a cooperating agency. FERC is the lead federal agency to review this project, but we are a cooperating agency. In our role as a cooperating agency, we do evaluation and work with the developer who provides evaluation on issues of navigation safety, port safety, and obviously port security. So we do our work in watching and monitoring this proposal. We require certain things of the developer, including the fact that we regulate the facility as a waterfront regulated facility. Any facility on the water that takes goods by ship is a regulated waterfront facility, and that predates 9/11. What we used to require is safety information. What we now require post 9/11 is not just safety information, but security information. It's interesting, we're sitting on the eve of the Maritime Transportation Security Act regulations. Tomorrow is the deadline for all these facilities on the water to have security plans in place that have been reviewed and approved. So I've been signing letters right up until today, and all your facilities that are currently operating are in compliance with that new U.S. regulation that came as a result of 9/11. The other thing we do, obviously, is we work with the ships. And the ships that ply our waters are U.S. flag vessels, and they're also foreign vessels. So we not only enforce domestic regulations for the waterfront facilities, we also regulate the shipping in terms of U.S. laws and international laws and treaties. We work with the International Maritime Organization and the International Maritime Community to ensure that all the ships that come into U.S. ports comply with not only U.S. regulations, but international regulations. In the years of our regulations, the whole history of our regulatory process is born out of maritime incidents and tragedies. Things like the Titanic, forest regulations in the international community, forest regulations in the U.S. community. So this is the kind of work we do. We are a safety and security office that deals with commercial shipping and port security and port facilities. So we have the safety role and we have the security role. We deal with very detailed regulations in terms of cruise ships for passenger safety, the dinner cruise boats that you see for safety and security. We deal with ferries for safety and security, and we also deal with a category called hazardous cargoes, of which LNG falls into the category. It's considered a hazardous cargo, as is oil. All the oil you receive is considered a hazardous cargo. So this category is one of the categories of many that we deal with in regulating for port safety and port security. We have very, very broad authority. I actually have very broad authority in law and regulation. For instance, we can enforce a safety zone. If we have an issue on your waterway where we have a collision of vessels and I don't want anybody else to get in the way, we can shut the waterway down and establish a safety zone. We also can establish security zones, and that's the kind of thing you're probably most familiar with. The work you've seen with the LNG in Boston, that's post 9/11 security work. And just a little bit of my personal background, I have been in the office here in Rhode Island. Our office is in East Providence. I've been there for 2 years, but on 9/11 I was the number 2 person. I'm the number 1 person over there. I was the number 2 person in the Boston office on 9/11, and I was very involved in the development of the LNG security plan for Boston. So I have quite a bit of background and detail on that project, and I understand the process I need to go through in reviewing this project, having been there from 9/11 on. I also have worked in places like Houston and where they take hazardous cargoes all the time and petrochemical complexes and things like that. As I mentioned, tomorrow is the day. Tomorrow's the day that this Maritime Transportation Security Act regulation comes into place. Since 9/11, though, a lot of things have been done in the area of security, and it's absolutely been a team effort. And by a team effort, obviously I'm a federal regulator, and that's a federal navigable channel, and these are federally regulated facilities. But all the work we've done since 9/11 is done in cooperation with state agencies, local agencies, and the industry themselves. It had to be a team effort. Critical infrastructure in the country, just an example, 85% of your critical infrastructure, of which energy is considered critical infrastructure, is privately owned. So you have to have the cooperation of industry in enforcing safety and security regulations. The other issue at stake is just the work we've done with the local police, the state police, and the Coast Guard, and DEM, agencies like that have law enforcement authority on the water. That's the team of people that have been working since 9/11. So even though these regulations come into place tomorrow, the reality is we've all been working since 9/11 to secure the port. What we do now is there's a couple approaches that we take. First of all, the work we do is all risk-based. Nobody has enough resources to protect everything that's moving on the water, just like nobody has enough resources to protect every plane in the air, every highway, every subway. This is a very big challenge. So what you do in the U.S. is and what we do in the Coast Guard is called risk-based management. We assign resources and we evaluate risk. We've all done port vulnerability assessments. We've looked at every operation in our zone to say where are the greatest risks, what are the most high-risk facilities, ship movements, things like that. And you assign the resources based on that risk. You also have varying threat levels. I would say that when we were developing that LNG security plan in concert with the industry and the local police and state police and everybody up in Massachusetts, it was the only ship not being brought into the country. And when we did our work, it was absolutely with, we don't know what's coming next. I don't think anybody in the U.S. knew what was coming anywhere after 9/11. Since that time, there's been a lot of great work done. There's been a lot of work done in terms of gathering intelligence, getting a better understanding of capabilities, really just refining our processes and our security and upgrading physical security at these facilities, wiring, fencing, lighting, monitoring systems and things like that. So there's been a lot of work that's gone on since 9/11 to upgrade our port security posture. Just so you understand, what we will do in the process of this particular project is we will obviously participate in public meetings like this because I would be happy to answer any questions you might have about general details about how we do port security. For instance, ships that came from foreign countries before would give us 24 hours advance notice of arrival, pre-9/11. And we would look and make sure they had a good safety record. And we'd make sure all their safety machinery was intact and everything was working right. And then we'd let them come into port and they'd do their operation. After 9/11, we changed the requirement from a 24-hour advance notice of arrival to 96 hours. And the reason we did that is because we not only are looking at the safety issues that still are a concern, and we should never lose our focus on safety, but we also look at security issues. So we have an Intel Coordination Center in Washington, D.C. that works with all the agencies that work in the Intel arena, from the FBI to the DEA to all the agencies. And what we do is we vet the vessel, the crew members. We know every crew member that's supposed to be on there. We know if they're on a list. We vet who owns the ship, where has the ship been, what kind of cargo is it carrying, what's the track record. And we do that, they do it at the DC level in this Intel Coordination Center, and then they forward us a report. If we are concerned about this vessel, say it happened to stop in a country that we don't think has great port security or whatever, we can board this ship offshore and do a sweep of the vessel, a security sweep, to look for stowaways, to look for anything that's out of whack, to physically look at their IDs, their visas, and look at their faces and make sure the people are who they say they are and things like that. So since 9/11, this 96-hour process has forced us farther out. We obviously are doing more boardings of ships at sea, but it's provided a way of screening these vessels to ensure that they are not a security threat to the U.S. So that work has been going on, as I say, since 9/11. The 96-hour advance notice and the work offshore is just one example of things we're doing. So to get back to this, and that's going on every day, and on all the ships that are coming into these waters. You've got a power plant in Somerset that takes coal ships and things like that, Brayton Point and things like that. But for this project, our work, some of you might have read in the paper, our work with the Port Security member. We have in Rhode Island an 80-member Port Security Committee, and we also have one in Massachusetts. And our work for this project, we will attend public meetings like this, and we will share general information with you about the work we do in the arena of port security. What I will not do in these meetings is give you any specifics about the security plan itself and the detailed work of what we do. But what I will tell all of you is the security plan that will be required to be developed, the vessel will have to have a security plan, and the facility will have to have a security plan. Those plans that have to be submitted to us for review, I will sit down with a subgroup of the Port Security Committee, which is your police chiefs and your fire chiefs, and your harbor masters, and the industry themselves. This is the state, federal, local agencies that work to guarantee the security as a team, as I mentioned earlier. We will review what's called security-sensitive information. And all the members of this committee have signed a disclosure that says they are accountable to keep that security-sensitive information secure. It's not classified information, but it's sensitive information, and it's not information that's appropriate for an open forum in the general public. So I'll attend these meetings, and we'll explain what we do, and we'll answer questions, such as the one that's going to come up tonight about the bridges. But we will also be holding a series of meetings with the key players in the law enforcement community and in the response community to review, here's the draft security plan provided by the developer. You know, do we think this is going to work? How are we going to do this? Is this, and ultimately, it's a federal navigable channel, and it's a federally regulated facility. So ultimately, the feds kind of have the final say on this, I'll be honest with you. But I would, as we did in Boston, we basically worked with the police in Boston, the police in Everett, the police in Chelsea, the fire in all those jurisdictions, the state police. We work as a team to come up with a plan, and because everybody is impacted by this and everybody has to support this. So those are kind of the two things that are going to go on. Now, I say this for this particular project, I should let you know that right now there are two proposals in my zone, the Keyspan expansion in Providence, as well as the Weaver's Cove. And I've also heard of the third in Somerset, although I've not dealt with anybody on that. So my office is now involved in two proposals, and there are studies being done at the national level that we requested and also the FERC requested to kind of, there's a lot of information out there, some of it's valid and some of it's a little exaggerated, and we owe it to the public, and I owe it to these people that are going to do the security planning with me and the review to give them what I would call a reasonable scope of what I think the risks are associated with this operation. So that's the kind of work we're going to be doing over the next several months to review this whole project and this whole proposal. And then as a cooperating agency, we provide that input to FERC. The standard things we've done already, obviously the simulator for the navigation safety, that's been done. If they dredge the channel, they can navigate, you know, this ship and they can bring it in. And even though it's 3 football fields, which sounds huge to you, this is a pretty standard sized tanker for things that call in the U.S. This is not, they're big. No, I mean, I'm telling you, they're huge, but these are pretty standard commercial ships. Most of the ships I was trained to inspect are anywhere from 700 to 1,000 feet long. But as far as navigation safety, you know, that work's going on at the same time all the security work is going to go on. And I think, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. We talk about LPG in Providence because that's probably the one thing you're most familiar with seeing on the waterways. We already bring LPG, which is a high-risk cargo, into Providence. Although they only get about 10 ship calls a year, it's nowhere near the frequency that they're talking about with this proposal with 50 ships. This likens itself more to what Boston gets. They get approximately 50 to 70 ships up there. And as I said, I never can stand up in front of anybody and say that I can guarantee 100% that something can't happen with this operation or anything that's going on out there right now. But I don't think anybody can guarantee anymore 100%. The only thing we can do is do our best to, as I said, evaluate the hazards, evaluate the vulnerabilities, evaluate the risk, and then apply risk-based approaches that attempt to reduce the risk associated with LNG. I think I'll leave it at that and allow for questions later in the evening.
You're talking like you support this and support S, gas. You're really talking like you are. Like you've already made your minds up. Rick sounds like they've made up their minds.
Let's wait till the time for us to be able to answer those questions. I think you'll be able to do that.
Thank you.
I think that I communicated when I was at the meeting in Bristol that, we're public servants, we're federal employees, we're going to evaluate this, we're going to provide our input. We don't make the final decision, and I haven't necessarily made a final decision, but if things are approved, if they're approved in Providence, I have a responsibility.
I realize you have a responsibility. You're talking like your minds have already been made up. You're talking about what you're going to do with the Taunton River and Narragansett Bay.
I basically said what I'm going to do to review the proposal. I know what I have to do to review the proposal. A security plan has to be written, regardless of if it's coming or not. They have to present a security plan to us for review, because everybody has to understand what it's going to take to do this if it is approved. If it is approved. Everybody, we have to do a tremendous amount of work in reviewing this under the EIS process. So it's almost like you have to take it as if it's going to happen and produce all the work before the final decision is made. You have to do all that preliminary work. You can't wait for the decision to be made and then say, okay, now let's go write a security plan. You have to say, here's what it's going to take. And then they make their decision. So there's going to be a lot of work that we're going to do between now and the final decision, that if it doesn't get approved, that was a lot of time spent. But this is the way the process works.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know this is, I think, a very good question, and hopefully we'll see that that all the presenters have done some research and given us some opinion, but hopefully we'll also be unbiased in terms of determining which side we're on. I also want to, Representative Enos from Tiverton, Little Compton is also here. Thank you for coming, Representative Enos. At this time, one of the concerns that we have is relative to the dredging in front of Tiverton, our bay, and also that affects so many fishermen, and also the environment, the aquaculture of the region, especially when we're dredging so close to so many fishing areas. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Dan Goulet from the CRMC, the Rhode Island CRMC. Dan?
Thank you. Hello? Thanks. My name is Dan Goulet. I'm the dredging coordinator for the state, and Ron Gagnon is my counterpart at DEM. We work closely together. What I'll do is I'll briefly explain the process that we have, as well as the limits of our jurisdiction for this particular project. I just wanted to let you know no application for dredging has been filed with either DEM or CRMC as of today, so we'll be speaking in general terms. We have been working with Weaver's Cove on some of the preliminary stuff, and I'll point that out as I go along. And also, too, I just want to describe or let you know that where our jurisdiction ends is basically where the state line ends. And so we don't have any jurisdiction over the facility or any of the work in Fall River. It's just going to be the improvement and maintenance dredging in the federal channel. That is the limit of the work for this proposal in Rhode Island. So it's really not as far-reaching as FERC or Captain Landry's stuff. Like I said, the CRMC and the DEM have a joint process. We have a joint application. Everyone comes to us with a pre-application meeting, and Weaver's Cove has done this. And at that time, we developed a sampling plan for testing of the sediments out in the channel. We did that with the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as our counterparts in Massachusetts, because it's a channel that spans both, we developed one sampling plan with all of them. So all of that work has been done, and they've done the sediment testing. So we have that information in our offices now. The way the process will work is once the Weaver's Cove Energy files with the CRMC, we'll do a joint public notice that will go out. It'll be a 30-day. We'll be looking for comment. I don't really know what the extent is. I know in general terms what their dredging is, but I don't know any specifics, so I won't really be able to answer how far-reaching our public notice will be. Once we have the public notice time period up, we will continue to do our review. A lot of DEM and CRMC's review is complementary. Both of us have engineers and biologists who look at this, but generally the CRMC looks at the engineering and technical side of it, user conflicts, things like that, impacts. DEM looks at fisheries impacts and water quality impacts. But again, during the review, we work fairly closely together. Once that review is done, we'll also have to work with our counterparts in Massachusetts because the disposal area for this project is Massachusetts. And as some of you probably are aware, in Rhode Island, you need to have a disposal area before you can get a dredging permit. So it'll be a bit of a chicken and egg process for Weaver's Cove to get a permit from both DEM and CRMC. And that this because of the improvement dredging, this will go in front of our council. So you'll have a chance to voice your opinion to the coastal council at that time. And that's really about it for our process. And I'll turn it over to Ron if there's anything he can.
I think Dan covered everything. We look at the water quality aspects and the potential impacts on shellfishing and fishing in the area of the dredging, and that's pretty much our extent of the review for the project, and we make our decision based on our the impact, the input we get from our scientists addressing those impacts.
Thank you again, and I know Rep. Amaral is around here, and I do want to thank him for inviting me. I actually work with Representative Amaral.
Can you introduce yourself again?
I'm sorry, thank you very much. My name is John Riondo, and I'm with the Rhode Island Economic Development Corporation. And I do work with Representative Amaral. Your good representative happens to be the chairman of the Naval Affairs Commission, and that group basically coordinates a lot of activity that happens on Aquidneck Island with Naval Station Newport and its various commands, and he takes his job very seriously, and we always try to improve on that relationship with the Naval Station Newport people. But importantly, why, and I think as we were asked to participate and present, here he is now, okay, now that I toasted him a little bit. Again, my agency is a non-regulatory agency as compared to my counterparts here sitting at the table. However, we do look at a lot of economics. We review economics. We analyze economics of a host of issues. And obviously, energy is a very serious issue in the Northeast, in New England, in particular in Rhode Island. It's not surprising to you that the energy is costly here. We're at the end of the pipeline, as I'm sure you well know. You've heard this discussion many times before. But what I wanted to do is just speak to you briefly, factually, about other economics that I think you may not want to hear, but I'm going to present it anyway. First of all, you heard Rich McGuire talk about the 13 projects that are currently under review by FERC. Well, beyond those 13 that are currently on the FERC table, there are more than 15 planned projects. So you're talking in North America alone, between a majority of them are in the U.S., they're seeing an abundance of planned projects, whether they be on the Atlantic coast, in the Gulf Coast, on the West Coast. There are some in the Canadian Maritimes and also a couple in Mexico. So it really begs the question, why is it? Why is it that the private sector is willing and ready to invest in these LNG terminals? And the very fundamental answer is the supply and demand is no longer there. The demand is outstripping the supply. That is a very simple, common fact. North America can no longer present and supply the American and the Canadian consumers for gas. Other facts, 46% of residents in New England currently use natural gas for heating, for cooking, heating your water. 45% of businesses do the same. They use it for heating of their businesses. They also use it for their processes. So you can see it has become, in the last 20 years, the fuel of choice. And when you compare it against the alternatives, oil, coal, it's a far cleaner and a far more environmentally friendly fuel, which is why the demand has come to where it's at today. These are extremely important items. And again, so where is it coming from? Well, if you look at the supply side economics for the next 25 years, if we continue to consume, and I'm not talking conservation, absent of conservation, if we continue to consume the way we do, and also the other big user of natural gas have been the power plants. Absent of Breaking Point, that's the only coal-fired plant in the local area, because what you have seen in Providence in particular, with Manchester Street Station, in Burrillville, Rhode Island, with the Ocean State Power, these are all natural gas fired, and they consume a lot of it to supply us with electricity. So again, those are basic common facts. Whether you accept them, whether you like what I'm telling you, I'm just going to speak to you plain and simple and direct.
Excuse me. No one is arguing the point of the importance of the LNG. We need it. We all need it. We know that. But we're fighting, what we're arguing for is the location of it. Yeah.
That's a very good comment, sir.
I understand, and I appreciate that, and you made a very good comment.
He is. He's giving it wrong. This is the Congressional Research Service report dated January 28, 2004. It lists recently proposed U.S. LNG terminals. It lists 31. 9 of them are offshore. Offshore. Take issue with what's propelling this.
That's right.
You know, the need for gas. Yes, we're not opposed to LNG. Putting it within with the nearest house being 1,200 feet away is moronic. And driving the project at Weaver's Cove is this. They don't want to go offshore, but they don't want to reduce the kind of money they're going to make from this.
They probably already paid.
They don't care about
We agree on that fact.
Let's
That's exactly
hold on one second, please. Hold on, John. I understand. You made some good points, and you made a very good point as well. Let's let John finish. He has a different point of view, and then we'll have an opportunity to list those same concerns, and it'll be on record. That way, it's documented, so everyone has a chance to speak. But I understand the passion, and I appreciate it.
Well, another concern, excuse me, with all respect. We've been here an hour, and there are so many people here I know want to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't want to spend the night here.
Well, this is an important enough issue that I'm willing to dedicate, as I said in my opening remarks, to spend as much time as necessary to answer questions to make sure every voice is heard. But I just want to finish so John can finish his comments. I know they'll be very brief, and then we'll go right to the question and comment period.
Thank you very much. And ironically, the gentleman who spoke up on the backside there, who first commented about offshore and the siting, we agree. Effectively, equitable siting is the issue. We don't disagree that. We agree with you on that respect. That it's not warranted, and it shouldn't go in locations that don't make sense. It should go in locations that do make sense. And effectively, I can't answer that question. I can only talk to you about the economics. I don't know why.
We are not LNG
All I'm saying is I don't know why. I don't live in Massachusetts. I don't regulate Massachusetts, and I deal with my counterparts in Massachusetts, but I live in Rhode Island, and I work for the state of Rhode Island, and that's what I can answer too. So, with regards to the point about...
Put it in Rhode Island.
The irony is there is one proposed in Rhode Island. I think you heard Captain Landry state that there is the LNG terminal by T-Span, which has been there for 30 years, is proposing to take shipments again, from offshore supplies and bring it into the port, and they're looking at about 50 to 60 ships per year, pretty much the same frequency of shipment as proposed for these facilities. So, again, before that gentleman made his comment, and again, I will admit we agree on that point that there needs to be better equitable siting. We are looking at offshore there's no doubt that it'll drive the cost of what you and I pay for gas, but if we accept that, so be it.
Anyway.
So,
Put it offshore.
and again, more importantly, I think to the gentleman's comment, we did want to hear, so I will stop now and listen to your comment.
Can we just clarify one thing, though, before we continue? Because I do have to work tomorrow, and I'm not willing to stay all night. But I will say one thing. You have to understand what we're doing here. There's a federal process. There's a governmental process. There's a United States Constitution. These public meetings are designed to hear people's views. My role as a federal employee paid by you, the taxpayer, is to go through the process. So I absolutely have a requirement by law as a cooperating agency to go through this process of evaluation. Pardon me?
Why doesn't it listen to us?
Well,
it seems to be going in one ear and out the other.
I just want to clarify, we're all involved in a process here. This is the process. It's a federal evaluation process, and that's what we're doing right now. That's why we're here.
Do you recommend that the thing be moved offshore, or are you simply going to accept that it's going to be in this area? I don't hear you saying you're investigating offshore possibly.
That's right.
I think that is the first question. But from this point on, just so that we have this on record, if anyone has a question, maybe they can just state their name, and this so it'll be recorded, and we'll put the tape of this testimony into the draft EIS, so that it'll be another form of record keeping. Okay? So if you want to just give us your name.
My name is Jerry, Jerry, Landay, Landay. All right? And I'm a Rhode Island resident. And if any of you read the book by Richard Clark, who was Clinton's anti-terrorism czar and who ended up running the government on 9/11, one of his early concerns was to shut down LNG facilities in Boston because of the danger of the LNG facilities. And not only that, but Al-Qaeda terrorists, he said, were coming in on LNG ships from Algeria. And this represented a very sensitive place. Now, it seems to me, per se, that the very look at a map would make it very clear that this is a massive population center. And that in and of itself, without any other reference to hearings, documents, studies, or anything else, ought to rule it out. Alternative site that is safer from the standpoint of security and from the standpoint of safety. And Weaver's Cove ain't it. Would you please comment on alternatives?
That's the question. Is FERC responsible for looking at alternatives
Why
to the
here?
programs?
Okay, I will attempt to respond to your question, but before I do, I think I just need to explain that we are required to, once an applicant files an application with the FERC, we're required to go through this process of reviewing the project. We can't just decide to throw it out as soon as it comes in our door. We're required to go through the NEPA process. So that's what we're in the process of doing. We're not advocates for the project. We're not proposing the project. We're reviewing the Weaver's Cove project. So it's regarding alternatives, our environmental impact statement will look at alternatives to the project. That would include systems alternatives of how to use the existing natural gas facilities that are in the region. It will include alternative sites for the proposed facilities, and it will include offshore alternatives. So we will be looking at alternatives in our environmental impact statement.
Now, I have a question. Are these alternatives eventually going to be voted on by the FERC commissioners to determine which application is granted to which organization? When you make these alternative proposals in your EIS study, does then that go forward to the commissioners for approval for a particular one over the other?
Well, we will do a alternative analysis of the proposed project. We're not proposing the facility. The proposal is before the commission. We will do an analysis of various alternatives that are reasonable and would meet the project need, or what the purpose of the project.
I have a follow-up to that. That follows up, can you give us your name first? John Keppel. On June 22nd, 2004, that's just a week ago, Congressman Ed Markey testified before the Subcommittee on Energy Policy, Natural Resources, and Regulatory Affairs. The following is a quote from his testimony. In 1979, Congress enacted a law, I authored, which tried to learn from the Everett experience. That's what we're talking about right here. By directing the Secretary of Transportation to consider the need for remote siting as part of the rules applicable to all new LNG terminals. The Secretary of Transportation, unfortunately, has chosen to largely ignore this law and has failed to comply with Congress's intent. Congress makes the law. If you teach government in this country, Congress makes the law. The executive branch enforces the law. The Coast Guard is part of that executive branch. So is FERC. So is the DOT and the Department of Energy. They are not enforcing the law as the law was written. You've done it with a thing called exclusion zones. And you pretend that an exclusion zone is the same as remote siting. You can stand at Weaver's Cove and look at an elementary school 1,000 feet away. That's not remote siting. Offshore siting is. Some island offshore. What he's asking Congress to do is get involved in this process again. Congress was clear as can be back then. And you're not enforcing the law that's there. That's what this man is saying. We shouldn't have to be here today.
Ryan Diaz-Con from Fall River. I've got a couple of quick statements, but I also want to add to that. J. Dexter Peach, he was the director of the government office, accounting office in Congress. He testified to the U.S. Senate in 1979, and he stated then, we believe remote siting is the primary factor in safety. So again, FERC is not listening to the Congress. Now, I just want to add to this. A few weeks ago, the head of Weaver's Cove told a group of people in Somerset that if it did fail, if that tank did fail, it would be the largest Roman candle, the greatest Roman candle you would ever see. Okay? He stated that. Now, you're familiar with your ABS report, I'm sure. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Fay's report, Dr. Haven's report. These are very reputable scientific reports, all three. And all three talk about the intense heat that would come off of something like that. Remote siting is the only way. And to add to that, Captain Landry, you talked about the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States also claims that the federal government is going to protect the public safety of the citizens first. That's paramount. If you cite this within 1,200 feet of kids, families, You are not protecting the public safety. You're going against the Constitution. Thank you.
I spoke to Mr. Amaral earlier. My name is Rick Hamilton. I live on Hudson Street, Fall River. I want to inform your panel of a couple of instances that I know of personally. I've been a freight for 22 years. I've been a firefighter for 12 years, which now I'm not. In my 5 years of full-time firefighting, I noticed a 20-pound propane gas grill tank, or gas grill, was inside of a house and not a three-bedroom house to the ground. Right smack to the ground. Nothing left, not even two sticks. Carolina Freight was bought out by ABF in the late 90s. I don't know how many of you people remember that. Now, before Carolina was bought out, they had an explosion in one of their terminals. A man on a forklift spit a 55-gallon drum of flammable liquid. The liquid ignited. The driver died. The tank exploded. That was a 40-pound propane tank, a small forklift propane tank. It annihilated a trucking terminal of 60 doors. Freight, trailers, everything for 60 doors. That's as big as this building. Okay? You people want to put a tank in that's 580 feet long, I believe, right? And 280 feet high. That's 28 stories high and as long as this parking lot. And what do you think is going to happen with that?
Well, once again, this is not a FERC project. We're reviewing a private company's application.
I saw the 20-pound propane tank.
It is yours because you decide.
I saw the 20-pound propane tank before my eyes. That was my house fire. Okay? That was the one that I responded to. These firemen here can tell you that is possible. Okay? They would tell you that it's more likely. I don't know. I'm sure they've had gas grill fires. I don't know if they ever had a tank explode. All right? I want that. That's a 20-pounder. Okay? You have no idea, levy, this is going to cost. Okay? You have no idea what kind of an explosion is. And you don't even have to have a missile. You don't have to have anything. They do it with airplanes now. What are you going to do then? Okay?
My name is Elizabeth Furtado, and I live in Fall River. I don't live too far away from the pipeline that's going to go by my home. It goes by my home. That's why they want to locate Beaver's Cove, because there's a pipeline. So it'll be easier for them, save money. My question is this. It was mentioned that maritime laws are done in response to disasters. You mentioned the Titanic. Isn't it wiser to implement preventive measures rather than waiting for disaster to occur? Rather than wait for a disaster to happen, is it possible that recommendations could be made that a densely populated area is not the appropriate place for such a facility? I cannot understand. My parents live within a 1-mile radius. I cannot understand the thinking. I can understand the thinking of the bottom line, which I think is the reason why they want to locate there. The pipelines are in place. It costs less money for them to locate there rather than go offshore. Offshore means it takes money out of their pockets. They will not save us money. The bottom line, their business. I'm not business. I'm a teacher. I worry about my students. I worry about my family. I'm not a business person. I don't worry about the bottom line to put money into my pockets. That's why I'm a teacher. Okay? Okay? Working without a contract, mind you. Okay? That's not what I'm worried about, the bottom line. Because what's primarily in my interest, my family, the safety of those around me. I was born in Fall River. I planned to die here. Not by an LNG explosion or whatever. Oh, I'm sorry. She did not answer my question about the recommendation.
There's two-pronged part to your question. Do we enact laws and enforce laws to prevent accidents? Absolutely. My whole business is prevention, and that's why you probably don't know about us as much, because we spend a lot of time behind the scenes, going to every facility in the zone, boarding we do focus on error reduction. Now, as far as the second half of your question, you've moved out of my lead and back into FERC. And if you don't mind, I'm going to turn the thing. Now, I will say, though, that we have input into, we are a cooperating agency, and we have to examine the safety risk and the security risk associated with this whole evolution, from the ship transit all the way up to the terminal to the offload. So I'm not advocating my responsibility and saying I have no involvement in that. We absolutely do. And to the fire chief, who I work with many firemen, they will be given information on the studies that have been done. There are several studies that are out there. You've mentioned only a few. I'm familiar with a few more as well. And we have a national group right now with the Department of Energy, FERC, and Coast Guard looking at all the studies, because we're basically saying, you know, I can't sit here and be the authority on those studies. I don't want one. I know of the RPG in the Persian Gulf. I know of the accidents in the 40s. I do know of the history of all these incidents. But we have more information. We have a lot of studies out there, and I won't stand before the fire chief and the police chief and try to even discuss the security plan and the conflict management plan until headquarters says to me, which I anticipate they're going to do soon, says to me, this is what we believe is the best amalgamation of all these studies. This is what we think the risk is. Because everything I do has to be designed based on the risk. Now I'm going to let FERC finish.
Human life shouldn't be a risk, though.
That's right. You reduce risk as much as you can, but nobody
Put it
can.
all let's reduce it offshore.
Get to everyone's questions. We ask a question, we give a response that might not be favorable, but if we don't finish the commentary, more people aren't going to have time to ask questions. So let's go ahead and answer that question. Your second part was?
Is there a recommendation to be made so that it is cited somewhere else other than a highly populated area? And also, can I just follow up? The Everett facility has been open for quite a while.
30 years.
All right. 30 years. Had 9/11 happened prior to that, would the Everett facility be here?
But I think the question that you asked was relative to, are they going to make other proposals or looking at other possibilities? I think you answered that earlier, saying in your draft EIS, there will be an evaluation of the facility and other possibilities. And hopefully, at least the group here has a consensus that maybe offshore is a good possibility. I know you've been very patient. Go ahead and ask the question.
Jean Hyde, this is a question for Richmond Bryan from Burke. How and where does public safety factor in when you're reviewing one of these projects from Weaver's Cove or someplace else? Where does that come in?
Right. Okay. That's well, public safety for the commission is a big part of our analysis. So the safety of this project will be a big part of the EIS. I mean, we will be doing an analysis on safety.
Where does it factor in? Because it really should be top priority, I think, before anything else.
The question is, where does it factor into the EIS?
When you're going to make your decision, where does it factor in? After you've reviewed all the other data in the project, the factor that you have a a densely populated area, where does that factor in? When you make that decision and those commissioners vote, that's the way to do it.
In other words, is there a risk assessment associated with each site? Is there a risk analysis done?
For people.
Right.
Yes, that's part of the EIS process.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit further then?
Okay. We do, part of the safety analysis would include the siting of the facility itself. It includes the vessel transport, marine traffic. It will also include the LNG trucking that's proposed by the applicant. So the EIS will consider all aspects of the project.
All right, what are the criteria?
Well, the criteria, as far as safety,
people, yeah.
as far as the siting of the facility itself in Fall River, the terminal site, that is regulated by DOT, the Department of Transportation. We use their regulations. That's outside. The siting of itself and transportation is outside of FERC's jurisdiction. So.
Yeah, but you're making the decision. Is that correct?
We are not making the decision. DOT. That's correct.
All right, now how is that done? Do the 5 commissioners vote? Is it, how does that
Yes.
go? If it's
Once-
split, or how does that
okay.
work?
The question is, do the 5 commissioners
I
vote?
don't know, I'm asking.
Once
There are-
DOTs make that approval.
Currently, there's 4 commissioners at the commission. They will get our environmental assessment of the project, which is in the form of these EIS, environmental impact statement. That will be after the draft and after the final is issued. They will take that information as well as the non-environmental issues, which would include market, rates, tariffs, economic issues and concerns, and they will take all that information before they make their decision.
Sir, do you still have a question?
Part of it was answered, I think. My name is Steve Gallo, I'm Paul with the resident. The question, Mr. McGuire, is based on what you just said, do we have a bifurcated application process? When you said the siting is the jurisdiction of DOT. Did I misunderstand it?
The safety regulations that the FERC will consider, that is considered in our environmental impact statement, are under the DOT's regulations.
So there's no application that goes to DOT for siting. So FERC is based on the application. You review the application. You either approve or deny the application for siting at this particular location.
The siting is under our regulation. Yes, we will consider the DOT's regulations, and we'll analyze the DOT regulations as far as how this particular proposal meets those.
And if I could just clarify a little bit, based to follow up on the previous question, what weighting is given to the fact in the environmental impact study or in the discussion and decision-making process to the fact that the site is proposed to be in a densely, highly populated area?
Well, the reason why we're having public forums, the reason why we were out here last year and when we began our pre-filing process is to get public input. I mean, this site is in a densely populated site, densely populated area. We recognize that, and that will, our eyes are not closed to that. So that will be part of our analysis. We will disclose that in the document.
Let's just go. There's some people that have been very patient and have not questioned yet. If you want a question, then we'll go to the people that have already asked a question. We'll go to you, sir, and then you, ma'am. Okay? Go ahead. Yes.
I have a Mike Mioza from Fall River. I have a 2-part question for Captain Landry, and I have a question for Mr. McGuire. I believe late last week, Gordon Shear, the CEO of Wheelers Cove, made some statements about the tankers were only going to be coming in at night. He could stop the tankers with emergency equipment and go over the bridge. And I guess my question is, are these accurate statements? Is he telling the truth? Does he have information that the rest of us don't have? And my second part of that question, Captain Landry, is that you earlier said that you seek the cooperation of local authorities, fire, police, and yeah, I understand 2 weeks ago you are leaning towards not shutting down the bridges. So my question to you is, I guess that would be a 2-part question as well, is have you consulted with Fall River's local authorities to make that decision that you're leaning that way? And if not, why is the safety of Fall River residents less than those of Boston when they shut the Tobin Bridge down?
Part of your question was, are Gordon Shear's statements accurate? That he can do different things. The one thing he said was, and then the Providence paper called me after he talked. He said, we go under the bridge in 2 minutes. People took that to mean the bridge closes for 2 minutes. He said, based on the speed they're at, it only takes them 2 minutes to clear the bridge. That is an accurate statement using a certain speed and distance of that ship. I clarified with the paper, that is not how long the bridges have been closed when we have used that tool as part of our port security plan. If we've closed the bridge in Newport for an LPG, which we have done on occasion, it's not done in 2 minutes. It took 4 to 8 minutes. That's the best we could get in cooperation with the state police. But I will tell you that Boston, when we originally wrote the plan for the LNG in Boston, we all came to consensus to close the Tobin Bridge because that vessel comes up, turns around right near the bridge so that it can back in, so that it can get out. And the reason for getting out has always been that way for fire. The fire, if you have a fire on a ship in any port, you may want to remove it from the port. So that was kind of a standard safety procedure, the turning evolution. The turning evolution. All right, I'm not, please let me finish.
Let him finish, please.
Really all night.
Please.
When they're turning, when that decision was made, it was in consultation. Since then, as I said, we've evolved. We've done certain things with Intel. We've done certain things with the upgrades to security, vessel security plans, things like that. The Coast Guard is not requiring that bridge in Boston to be closed. Massport has chosen to close their bridge. They own the bridge. They own the airport. They own the port. There's certain facilities in the port. Massport made the decision to close the bridge. Because they made that decision, they sit down about every 6 months and they go through blackout dates, just like the airport, where they say, you know, we know the bridge is going to be heavy on Mother's Day because everybody visits their mothers, so don't come in on Mother's Day. We know the bridge, you know, you got to watch the peak traffic hours. So they went into a lot of work to manage those closures in conjunction with the arrival of LNG, which comes in weekly. I absolutely, as I write this plan, I am not requiring those bridges to be closed. However, I will say, I spoke with Ken Bianchi. He is a member of my Port Security Committee. He runs the Mount Hope and the Newport Bridge for the Rhode Island Turnpike Bridge and Turnpike Authority. You know, we have worked with him. I will consult with him on the bridges. But I'm leaning against having to close those bridges. Ships are coming under those bridges now, and we're not closing them.
Captain, are you aware that all the hospitals are on the
Yes,
opposite side of the bridge?
I absolutely am aware that emergency vehicles and all that's the reason you can't close the bridges.
If they put it offshore, they're on the lot. There's no hospitals out there to worry about, and no bridges to close.
It was pointed out that the other meeting I was at in Bristol, the issue of emergency vehicles. The 195 is the major hub for everybody. The Newport Bridge is an important hub. They're all important transportation corridors, so that'll all be factored in. So there were two parts to your question. The first one was Gordon Shear and our statement's accurate. You know, I understood how that got taken out of context, but understand that we haven't even begun to plan. So for Gordon Shear to stand up and say the bridges won't be closed, it's premature to say that. We have not done the security plan for this project. Well, it's premature, but I will say up here that I'm leaning against, when we evaluate the proposals, and I have to look at both. I have to look at Providence and I have to look at Fall River because it's the same waterway and the same bridges in some parts of the transit. You know, we've got to find other ways to facilitate port security without closing bridges.
Wait a minute, folks. We're not going to be able to get this documented if we speak out. So
right.
if you
So
have
does
a
that
comment,
answer
please.
your question?
Yes, thank you for answering my question. We are going to put up a sign, Ben Laden, come here.
Right. Well, but Fall River, absolutely. Every community along the way will be involved because we don't look at just the facility and we're not looking at just the ship. We are looking at the transit. We have port security committees on a quarterly basis. We have 8 geographic subregions. We've worked with Fall River and we've worked with folks with the battleship, and we've done port security exercises and reviewed our plans in all 8 geographic subregions. So I've worked with the fire chiefs, the police chiefs, the harbor masters on general port security, and I will continue to work with those groups as we evaluate this. Absolutely.
We're not a target. You build it, they're going to come.
Who's going to pay for all that security?
Hold on. We still have a second question.
Quick for Mr. McGuire. I think earlier you said that public safety was a #1 consideration when citing these facilities. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. The ABS report that recently was published at FERC Commission was a 135-page, very technical document. Yet FERC only gave the public 2 weeks to respond to that. I'm just curious, what in FERC's wisdom, if public safety is paramount in decision-making, why only 2 weeks to respond to such a technical document?
So in other words, is there flexibility in opening the public testimony for more than 2 weeks on this document?
I'm afraid that I'm not qualified to respond to that question. I mean, I hear the question. I'll take it back to the commission. we have an entire group of engineers, LNG engineers that have been working with the ABS study that the Commission hired a firm to conduct in order to address the safety concerns that we've become aware of. But as far as the comment period and the 2-week comment period, I'm not sure I can respond to that.
Somebody else? Okay. Who has not spoken? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. McGuire, how many members of this group? How many commissioners are there?
Currently, there's 4 commissioners that they're appointed by the president. They have a 5-year term, typically, and they are approved by Congress.
Are they all from the energy industry?
No, to keep partiality, there are no more than 3 representatives from any particular party. So they're not energy reps. They are appointed. They're either Democrats, Republicans, or Independents.
Can you give us the background?
Yes, you can look on our website that gives you a background of all 3 of them. I mean, all 4 of them.
Is there concern at FERC that your chairman, Pat Wood III, is a former attorney for Baker Botts, and that's the legal firm representing Weaver's Cove?
That's true. I mean, it's a true comment. He is a formal employee of Baker & Botts.
That says it all.
Hold on, folks. We got a question. This young lady has a question.
You said the truck is going in and out of Weaver's Cove. We have been told in the area, and I'm not even know that you're aware of this, we have been told they have no jurisdiction. Weaver's Cove, its owners down there, have no jurisdiction over the truck that's coming in to pick up the LNG and transport it. On our highways and roadways, they said that's out of their jurisdiction. One of my biggest concerns is we live in a terror world right now, so anything could possibly happen, you have to be prepared. You read every day of people driving without license, driving who had their license revoked. These truckers come in and out, and Weaver's Cove tells us it's not their problem. They have no jurisdiction. They don't have to check that out because that's not in their jurisdiction. So if they're having 100 truckers coming on a weekly basis to transport that out, daily basis, what protection do we have? What security do we have living in that area? And they're blatant about it. You have to understand part of our concerns is, like I said, Weaver's Cove is going around, their representatives saying, done deal, don't worry about it, there's nothing you can do. You can do your protest, you can do whatever you want to do. But it's a done deal. And we see people representing FERC, whether we like it or not, and they seem to be dining with them, whining with them, dining them. On board. Well, whatever. To us, hardworking people, it looks like Weaver's Cove has all the money and they're doing everything that they can, and we're just wasting our time. So it's very frustrating, especially the truckers, because 100 trucks a day, and they don't even check their licenses?
Well, I guess the question you're asking is, number one, is the trucking in and out?
Yeah, the facility security plan. Well, there's 2 aspects to it. The facility security plan that is required by law in the post-9/11 world will require access control, and that facility will have to explain how they are making sure these trucks that are coming in to load at their dock, because they're on the facility, are screened or secured. It's part of their security plan from us. There's probably another aspect in terms of DOT that regulates gives them their licenses and their permits to drive a hazardous material, because it's a special license to drive in a truck.
But you just had on 9/11 last year, up in the Boston area, that trucker who overturned and shut down the highway, all the schools were closed, everything was closed for like 10 hours that day. That was his 3rd sighting.
Yeah, that is another agency, and I think that's where Weaver's Cove is saying we don't have the responsibility for the truck. They do have the responsibility for access control to the facility, and they're going to have to make sure that that they know who that trucker is that's coming in to get the gas. That's part of, but that's as far as the rest of what goes on the road. It is another agency.
Do they have to have a valid license to pick up that stuff?
Yeah, I would think so. Absolutely. So,
This is kind of like.
Hold on, we have one more question, then we have,
Why,
sir, you can go next since you haven't asked the question.
why,
Last question.
if safety is such an issue, why are they closing down the port in area when they have the Democratic National
safety and security, I think they've been pretty forthright with why they're doing what they're doing. They're not closing the complete port. They're putting security zones around certain areas.
They're not allowing any tankers in.
Yeah, but you know how many resources go to securing that? They're going to be applied doing other things. They're going to secure the Democratic National. It's a nationally significant security event as designated by the president. The Secret Service is in charge of the whole evolution. I'm going to be up there helping. And the truth of the matter is, that's the resources that need to be applied to other things are not available to do the normal evolution for the LNG.
Sir, you had a question. You're patient.
Captain Landry.
Sir, what's your name?
Tom McHenry. Okay. Now, post 9/11, how do you go about securing the perimeter on both sides of the Taunton River? I mean, I'm thinking in terms of like somebody opens a window or something like that, you know, rocket propelled grenade.
Yep. You know what? Yeah.
I have another question after that. Who's going to pick up the tab for this massive security for?
Believe me, that'll be a topic of discussion when we get together and write the security plan. How will it be paid for? Let me give you the truth. We look at all the scenarios that have taken place worldwide. We don't just hold this company accountable for what's happened in the U.S. We look at the Cole-like attack. We look at the Lindbergh. We look at the RPG that was fired in the Persian Gulf at the LPG vessel. We look at all those scenarios, and we require this developer to give us their security plan that addresses those potential risks, even though we've never had, and this is, I'm not going to get any more detailed than that, but even though we've never had a coal incident in the U.S., and even though we've never had a shoulder-fired missile in the U.S., yet, we are requiring them to look at international incidents of terrorism and write a security plan that addresses the mitigating strategies for those types of incidents, okay? So, you got several elements to it. The funding of those resources, how will that be funded? That's a good question. I personally had to put in, I would have to put in a proposal to say, I don't have enough resources. If I'm going to have high-risk cargoes on a weekly basis, that's going to increase my workload. All right, and then the other agencies are going to have to look. But we can't even speculate on what it's going to cost us until we look at how are we going to, what's the security plan going to entail? So we're going to sit down in a security-sensitive environment, and we're going to detail, and that's the point I made earlier, we have to go through the whole process of evaluation. We have to write the whole thing. We have to treat it as if it's coming to do a proper evaluation before we can even say to FERC, this is what it's going to take, and before they can even make a decision. That's my responsibility as a cooperating agency. So we're going to have to look at cost figures, who's going to do what. Right now in Boston, it was originally, when I was up there, it was 35% local and state. The rest was Coast Guard. Right now, it might be even 50-50. The Port of Boston the police got some port security grant money to upgrade their ports, their on-water security forces. The state police got money to upgrade their on-water security forces. We don't have those kind of resources in this region. I'll tell you, we don't have them right now. So we have to look at how are we going to do this and how are we going to fund it.
We don't really have the financial resources, to burden our tax base with,
I know.
Spending a whole lot of money.
I don't know the exact details, but there is detail money being paid by the facility. They've been paying Everett for fire details pre-9/11. They do pay for some security details, so there is detail money.
$8,000 a year.
Yeah, but
Hold on.
Yeah. Those are going to be things that are going to have to be looked at.
I do have a question that's specific. I do have one question that's specific to Newport County, and it does involve interdepartmental cooperation. As you know, the Newport Naval Base is situated in Newport, and it's a strategic area for the United States. Is the Secretary of the Navy going to have any input as to whether or not the tankers are going to go by that facility?
They have a rep on our Port Security Committee, and we talk about this. So they want to have input, they can have input. They haven't expressed an interest yet. I mean, they pretty much watch out for themselves.
Well, that, I
but
would
that's
imagine
not
that.
to say they're not going to want to participate. They're a member of our Port Security Committee.
Thank you. Sir.
I have a couple of comments. First, my name is Joe Cavallo, and I want you to know that I'm the very proud chairman of the Coalition for Responsible Siting of LNG Facilities. Very proud. Because I stand up as the chairman for regular folks in this community. People who have, 7,000 of whom have signed petitions from Newport to Fall River. People who give out of their pocket, even though we're a poor community, to buy signs, to put up, to express our displeasure at this plant. And quite ironically, the last two times that we've had officials from FERC come to this community, the night before, our signs have been stolen off of people's lawns. And I wonder why that's so, what the coincidence is there. I would like to ask the Weavers Cove people if you have any information about that. Because it seems very, very coincidental that when you guys are going to show up, our signs disappear. And you know what? They're paid for by the contributions of regular folks in Fall River and all along the route. We don't take money from corporations, okay, to finance that. And we're a little skeptical about anything that Weavers Cove says, because their CEO said these tankers are double-hulled. And what that means is they can't be breached by a rocket or by a ship or by a small boat loaded with explosives. Making it sound like the double hull is because of security when we know it's about the cryogenics of the damn ship. And this is the Lindbergh, on fire, when Mr. Shearer said they won't be breached. This is a double-hulled liner off the coast of Yemen, 20 feet in, burning. So no wonder we don't trust these people. They also told us that they were going to dredge a certain amount. Now that's been revised. They're going to use the contaminated sediment from the Taunton River. We should be thankful for this. They're going to use the contaminated sediment from the Taunton River to form the berm around this damn monstrosity they want to put in our community. And Mr. Grasso with his pot of geraniums around the tank. That's what it is. It's laughable. It's absolutely laughable. It's a disgrace to people, to citizens of this country, that this project would have even gotten this far. If you really are serious about risk management and all the computer-generated models that you want to produce, tell us how many people will die if one of these things blows up and we have what Mr. Shearer said, the largest Roman candle that we've ever seen. How many people? It's 9,000 people in that 1 mile radius. So if there's a failure of that tank, or like in Algeria where the gas is going in and it leaks, how many people are going to be incinerated? How many are going to be burned for the rest of their lives? That's what we want to know. That's a risk assessment worth doing. And then we're telling people how many lives are going to be lost. Nursing homes, public housing projects, elementary schools, Somerset High School right across the river. This is about greed. This is about greed and avarice. Greed and avarice. And you know what? We've already made a difference. We've made a huge difference. Just regular citizens have made a huge difference. You know, I never knew what venture capitalists meant before I got involved in this project. I did not even know what the term meant. Then somebody informed me, educated me. They're people with a lot of money, who want to invest a lot of money, who want to make a lot of money. And you know what? They must be a little nervous, because now they're willing to give up half of what they realized they were going to make in profits and bring Hess in. You know, because they got deeper pockets than them. It's an outrage. It's an absolute outrage that this project, that we're even here tonight. Absolutely. The risk assessment that Captain Landry talked about She would save herself so much time and effort and resources and money and manpower and everything else if you sited the damn things offshore where they belong.
Of this war, protecting an oil platform off of Iraq. So even if they're offshore, the Coast Guard will be involved. So we have a job in this regardless of where this is sited. So just so you understand, our port security missions.
Well, regarding something offshore, you're losing how many people compared to 9,000?
Right. Well,
every person is important, but I can
just want to understand we'll have responsibility with that.
But it doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood with 9,000 people.
And a lot of children.
And children sleeping hospitals.
And coming up 25 miles.
25 compared to 5 in Boston. And they don't even want it there anymore.
That's right.
Yes,
You
sir.
vote for your child abuser.
This is Commander Landry. If the exclusion zone for LNG tanker is 2 miles in front, 1 mile to the rear, and 3/4 of a mile on either side, why is there no exclusion zone above it? If it's coming within 100 feet of the top of a bridge, that certainly is much closer than 2 miles, 1 mile, or 3/4 of a mile. How could you possibly say that the bridges wouldn't be closed? It seems to me that you're just inviting a terrorist to drop a 30-pound bomb on it and blow the bridge up. It seems inconceivable that that would happen.
You can say that we're going to have to model exactly what kind of a charge could a rider truck on a bridge, produce on an LNG tanker. That's been looked at. A lot of these things. And I'm not going to, I'll tell you, as far as standing up here and saying how many people are going to die if you have an incident, that kind of consequence management evaluation that will be done with the fire chiefs. The studies that were done for Boston modeled the LNG, modeled various scenarios, and gave radiant heat distances. And the fire chief in Boston has those radiant heat distances, and he knows what his challenges are. If a terrorist were to maliciously attempt to attack an LNG vessel, which is not an easy target because it's double hull, but no one can guarantee 100% that something can't happen to anything in this country, and that's why we have absolutely. I'm familiar with the limber, and it's a coal-like attack, and it's a similar waterborne vessel loaded with explosives. So those are the kinds of scenarios that we are modeling.
Hold on, folks. Hold on. We're going to let you finish.
You're leaning to not closing the bridge.
Because I know what Boston's done in the evaluation, and Boston is not directing that bridge to be closed. Massport has decided to continue to close it. So I'm telling you, the evaluations have been done on what, and I'm not going to get into specifics. I'm not making a decision until I do it here. I have to do the same analysis and evaluation that they did in Boston. Okay? So we have to go through the process here. And I'm using Boston absolutely as a model, and I was using the Lloyd study done in Boston to kind of get a sense of what I think it's going to look like. But now there's been the ABS study, there's been a study by the developer, Sandia Labs is doing a study for the Department of Energy. So there's several studies out there that have to be peer-reviewed and evaluated, and I'm not going to sit here and be, like you say, it's a very technical study, and it's beyond my capability and my training to sit down and evaluate those studies. I'm going to rely on the federal folks in Washington, D.C. that are trained to evaluate those studies from all these agencies to tell me what's my challenge, what's my scope, and I will come back with that information to the fire chiefs and the police chiefs and say, this is what you're up against. Just like we planned for oil spills, how we're going to respond. An average, most probable, worst case discharge. That post-docs on Valdez, we deal with an average, most probable, worst case discharge. That's what I'm looking for from this. What is the average, most probable, worst case scenario? And is it a breach of the hull? Is it the cryogenics? What aspect of this is what are my risks associated with this? And that's the only way we can do the evaluation. I can say I'm leaning against requiring the bridges to be closed because I know what's going on in Boston. But I'm not saying that we've finished our work yet. And that's not to say that the state can't turn around and say, I'm going to close the bridge anyway. But you have to defend your decision as I will have to defend mine.
So you had a follow-up question.
Yes.
Pardon me?
Why did you feel the need to make that statement?
Because I think too many people are looking at Boston. Too many people are looking at Boston and basically saying we're going to do it exactly that way.
We want the same safeguards.
Exactly. Here's the point. Here's the point. Every federal maritime security coordinator, of which I'm one and of which he is one, has to look at their whole zone and what are the risks and make the evaluations. And that's not to say I'm going to put you more at risk than you're not less important than Boston. You are configured differently, and that ship transit is different. And you have to allow us to be able to evaluate the conditions in this transit, the conditions at this facility, and they're not exactly the same.
You want to evaluate, but yet you're already saying I'm leaning that way.
Because I know Boston isn't requiring it. Boston is not requiring that bridge to be closed. Massport is insisting on closing it because they were stunned by the fact that the terrorists left the Logan Airport. Massport is call it risk averse, call it what you want. You can ask them. I cannot answer why they continue to close that bridge.
But how can you have exclusion zones? And you're appeasing Weaver's Cove by taking that away from us.
You know what? I really resent when people in this room don't accuse me of going to dinner or being in their pocket. I personally resent that attack on my integrity. And I defy any of you to accuse me of being in bed with industry, because that's an insult to the work I do and the work my staff does. So if I'm going to continue to come to these meetings and engage in dialogue, I do not appreciate personal attacks on my integrity. I have never been bought by industry. I'm a humble federal public servant just like you. I don't make a ton of money. I don't own stock in Weaver's Cove. So please don't do that to me. That's all I ask. I'm getting a little personal there, but you've attacked us a few times and attacked my integrity, and I don't appreciate it.
Folks, listen please. We're going to, I know that it's getting late and people have very, very passionate issues and concerns. Let's try to keep the issues germane to the conversation, and let's make sure that we don't get personal in our dialogues. Again, these people did not have to be here today. This is not mandated. They did that at my request, and I would just ask you if you could just not make it personal to them. I know you have concerns with FERC. That's FERC, okay? He's a representative of FERC. It's not him. It's the representative of FERC, okay? If you have concerns about the Coast Guard's decision, it's the Coast Guard's decision. It's not because they're doing X, Y, and Z. It's a decision they make. If we can just respect that, I think we can get a lot more accomplished tonight. Yes, sir, you have a follow-up question, then we'll go around the perimeter.
Don't worry, I've worked with 89% men, there's only 11% female. I didn't mean to get personal there. I just really had to say that because I just want people to understand that, just where I'm coming from, okay?
The Lindbergh showed how easy it is for a small skip with TNT to blow up and go through a double-hulled vessel. In Fall River, we had the unique situation where the channel for about 5 miles is just 600 feet from the shoreline, and then immediately residences begin. Now, you had mentioned earlier that you couldn't guarantee with 100% certainty that you could protect the public in all instances. How could you possibly, given that usually there would be an exclusion zone of 2/3 of a mile on either side of the ship, how could you possibly protect the ship when there's only 600 feet from the channel to the shore?
You can't, and you would have to then prepare for the reality that says if a small waterborne vessel loaded with explosives breached all the security you put around this vessel to do an anti-pole-like maneuver, if they get through and they do impact, then this is what's going to happen. And I will discuss that with the fire chiefs and the police chiefs and the people on the water in the security-sensitive environment. Absolutely. They will have the numbers based on these studies, and they will know, just as Boston knows, the radiant heat distance, and how far in, or when that harbor narrows down to 1,400 feet, they know what is going to be breached along the waterfront. I mean, those are the things we will talk about in those meetings. And those are the things we will evaluate.
Will the residents know?
Yes.
Yeah, why haven't those things been discussed already as the first thing, as priority?
They're being discussed, but we're not. I said it's going to take at least 6 months to do the security plan. It's all part of the process. We are waiting for. I was waiting for the ABS study for one thing. I'm waiting for the Sandia Lab study, and I'm waiting for Washington D.C. to finish evaluating all the studies that are out there. I don't want to start my work until they finish all that. I'm familiar with the study that was done in Boston prior to bringing that vessel into the harbor after 9/11. I'm familiar with that Lloyd study and the Quest study, but these are recent studies that have just been completed, and it's going to take time to do the proper review of those.
Are you aware of what this gentleman just said about the width of the channel?
With the distance?
Of the width of the channel?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to have to look at the whole waterway, and we're going to have to look at the whole transit, and we're also going to have to look at the facility and outboard of the vessel. Yes. Yeah, it narrows down in places, just like it does, absolutely.
I want to know who's funding all these studies, all these independent studies all over. Who's funding them? Not the energy people, I hope.
Well, the energy people generally do their own studies, and they present them. So Weaver's Cove has done several studies. District Gas paid for the Lloyd study to the tune of $100,000 after 9/11. It was more than that. Quest did a study at the request of the Department of Energy because Lieutenant Governor Swift went to Secretary Rich and said, I want the study. So sometimes the studies are done, funded by the industry. Sometimes the studies are funded by the government. And then all of them are shared and reviewed.
What we'll do is this. We're going down to the last 6 questions. If anybody has a question, we'll start now. We're going to go, this is the order. We're going to go there, 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 you, sir, and you, ma'am. You'll be the last person. That sound fair? Okay, and that's what we'll do. Please begin. Please just state your name for the record.
My name is Sarah Richmond from Fall River. I have a question for Captain Landry. There's a safety zone around that LNG tanker when it's en route and when it is tied up at the facility if Weaver's Cove is not done. How big an area around that ship is secure? Will there be traffic on the Taunton River, both commercial and pleasure traffic, while one of those ships is tied up or en route?
It depends on what they set up to mitigate an anti-coal-like attack and things like that. It's, you've seen, I've heard discussion, and maybe you've heard it too, of the use of these huge barrier booms or whatever you call them. It's the same thing the Navy uses to protect in San Diego Harbor. They protect all the naval ships with these huge rubber booms that they put around the vessels so to avoid an anti-coal-like attack. That's one thing I've heard discussed as a possibility. So I can't say what the distance is going to be until we sit down and go through it all and say, what do we need to do? I don't know what the distance is going to be, and I don't know what restrictions on traffic there are going to be. But we will share general information like that. When we get that far in the plan, I'll sit up here at these meetings and say, the plan calls for this, this, and this. I won't get specific about security details, but general information like that is going to have to be shared with the public. Just no different than the security zones they had to put off nuclear power plants after 9/11. You shared that with everybody to say, you know, recreational traffic, you can't go here anymore. You know, lobstermen who've been fishing there for years, we might be able to give you access if you show us who you are and check into the safety zone. So, you know what I mean? There's a lot of details, but that's the kind of evaluation.
The interesting thing, though, is that the river is very narrow there. And you've got Montauk Electric across the way, and you're going to have the width of the ship close to 300 feet, and plus the docking facility, and it's not going to leave very much waterway, free waterway, between that ship and the Somerset Shore. Just for a point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Earlier you mentioned how truck drivers are going to be screened. And don't worry too much about the truck drivers. And Captain, you're probably the only one at the table that can answer this. The range of a shoulder-mounted missile launcher. Does anyone know the range of one of those sitting at that table? You probably would.
Well, it's in the reports, and
it's
I haven't
2,100
memorized
feet.
it. It's in the reports.
2,100 feet.
And I've also done work with the TSA.
Which means they could fire that from Highland Avenue. They could fire it from across the river at Brayton's Point. They could fire it anywhere up and down the Taunton River or Narragansett Bay. And anyone within that 1 mile range is dust.
Yeah,
we don't need it.
Right.
We don't need it. Is Fall River a target? No, Fall River is not a target. But if you build this thing in Fall River, they will come and make it a target. It belongs offshore.
My name's Tom Zayner, and I live within a half mile of a plant in Somerset. And my question is to Captain Landry. In the last few years, you mentioned before about safety on the marine I don't believe Congress has even passed a bill that mandates that tugboats and oil barges have to carry anchors or safety equipment. They still haven't passed that law. And we've had, in the last 5 years, some major oil spills in the Sound off Rhode Island coast. Seems to me that we're going to take this 1,000-foot tanker and we're going to drive it down Narragansett Bay through the West Passage. And Weaver Cove people made a mention in the paper last night that this was going to be done at night. And that they could stop the ship with almost on a dime. And if you're familiar with the Fall River Brighton Street Bridge, I probably couldn't count on my hand how many times it's been hit by small barges and tugs going in there at night. And now we're going to take this 1,000-foot tanker, we're going to stop it on a dime, and the bridge is only going to be closed for 8 minutes. Well, I came, on my way here, a sailboat came through there, and I timed it. I was there 15 minutes before the bridge opened and closed.
First of all, on the spills, I was the federal NC coordinator for the budget space bill. There is a regulated navigation area that requires, if you're not twin screw, that you have to have assist tugs based on your North Cape spill. There have been several incidents of spills where you take a look and you require things, and there has been legislation and requirements put in place as a result of the B-120 spill in Buzzard Space. So we do look at all that, but that's not really why you said that. Your main question is these bridge closures. That's a different type of bridge. That opens up. To say they're coming in at night is another thing that's premature, because we don't know how we're going to evaluate the security. Boston, they do both. They do nighttime and daytime. But I know for a while in the beginning we were only doing daytime. I mean, it depends on, what your concerns are, what your risks are. So it's premature to say we're only going to come in at night, or we're only going to come in the day.
In your honest opinion, as a safety person, do you think that you could adequately and safely bring that tanker in at night in the Narragansett Bay?
Yes. Yeah.
And
now,
you could guarantee
you said safety. You didn't say security.
Okay.
Said
Security.
safety. Said safety. Tractor tugs. They've been doing it for years. These ship drivers and we can't say we don't have accidents, but I can tell you since the Exxon Valdez, we have a reduction in the number of oil spills, and things are better out there as a result of that legislation. So I would love to say that the regulations that are taking place tomorrow for maritime security internationally and nationally are going to reduce our risk of port security breaches and incidents. I would love to say that, just like DHS would like to say they can guarantee aviation safety, they can guarantee subway safety, they can guarantee highway safety. All of us would like to be able to guarantee safety in this country. But I can say, with the track record they have for safety, I can say, yeah, I think they could bring a ship in safely at night. Security-wise, we don't have enough of a history of terrorism in this country to build a case to stand up here and say, I can guarantee. I don't have enough years of experience in the port security arena to say that. We're 3 years, past this incident. The last time we had anything like this was World War II, when we were standing on the coastline looking for German U-boats and subs. And some of you may have people that remember that, but I wasn't born until the 50s. So I don't think we have enough of a history. What we do is we look at what's happened internationally, and we attempt to provide strategies to mitigate those risks, and we try to have robust technologies, improved physical security, better intelligence, and we're working very hard at this. But I can never stand up in front of anyone and say that I can guarantee 100% that something can't happen. And I don't think any of us can say that.
One more question. Now, where this ship is going to dock in the Taunton River, that was mentioned that it's across from Montauk. Well, it's basically about 1,500 feet across to the Montauk area. And it was also stated by the Weavers Cove people that when their tanker was in there, their security, they would allow that the boats could pass up against the shore at Montauk. Well, as a former employee there is a 100-foot security zone that's always been in place in front of Montauk for discharge and intake, which is kind of different than New England Power. But if you put a coal barge there and their ship, which is bound to happen somewhere along the line when they're bringing in one a week, how does that going to affect the people that want to be able to travel up and down the river in your security zone? It doesn't leave very much for security zone.
Yeah. I know what they ended up doing in Boston for the Mystic River and the people that had a marina up there. Initially, after 9/11, that marina was shut down. Now, 9/11 happened in September, and you had all winter, and there weren't many people going out in the harbor during the winter. By the time summer came, they worked out a system for those marina people to be able to go through and transit the security zone. So sometimes you work out arrangements, and we've done this in a lot of situations, where the regular customers, if you will, can transit the security zone. So, I haven't looked at it yet. We will look at that as part of it. That will be something we have to report to the...
It's a ludicrous plan. Anybody I've talked to that's not vested in this thing, either by virtue of a union member that stands to gain from it, or somebody who thinks that the taxes they pay are really going to benefit the city, they're going to go for extraordinary safety procedures. The protection for 25 miles up the river, through Mount Hope Bay and up the river, for the additional dredging of the river. I know Rivers Cove is paying the first time, but one of the studies says that it'll have to be dredged every 2 years. You have an opportunity here, and the opportunity is to stop it, to say no. As I was writing, I had a prepared talk. I didn't know exactly the format of this thing. But Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, it's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. These people deserve a sense of safety. This project is a very real form of terrorism for them. Talk with the people who live in that neighborhood, who have children in that neighborhood. Talk with some of the older people in that neighborhood. And they are terrorized. And you have an opportunity, those of you at that desk have an opportunity to stop this, to say it's inappropriate. Regardless of what your supervisor says, your job is protection. Your job is just economic to cite. You have an opportunity to stop the whole process. I don't think the people here, if this thing is approved, the protests won't stop, because people in these communities along Mount Hope Bay are going to defend their right to safety.
Boston, hey everybody, the LNG is coming, because it's a security issue. Now, most people have figured it out, because they have a canned statement, the bridge will be closed for, I don't know what they say on the news. There's a standard thing that says the bridge will be closed for whatever, and everybody's pretty much figured out when the LNG is coming in up there. Yeah, high tide, right? But we will not, if this thing, when I evaluate this, there will not be an announcement that this thing is coming in, because you don't do that. We don't get specific about port security issues. So, if you want to talk to your police chief or your fire chief, and if he decides that he wants to, have some announcement or something, that's his prerogative. But, it's...
So people on the bridge, the protection of the people on the bridge is not taken into consideration.
Well, what are you protecting yourself against? I mean, you are protecting yourself against what?
Against someone on the bridge dropping something on that tanker and it exploding. I mean, I wouldn't want to take that chance. I know people, there's terrorism, but there's also just crazy people. There's also just plain old ordinary accidents.
Right.
There's an accident on the bridge. The accident goes over the bridge and the tanker's going under. There's 1,000 possibilities.
Sure. In everyday life, everywhere, there are 1,000 possibilities.
But, that's the point. The people on the bridge, their welfare and safety is not being taken into consideration.
No, that's not true. There's two different points you're making. You're making a personal choice of whether or not you're going over that bridge. I'm making an evaluation based on what I think is a realistic, can it really happen? Can a terrorist filled with a rider truck explosive go off that bridge and damage the ship? That's the evaluation we make on whether or not we think we need to close the bridge. So,
I'm not giving you the choice of protecting myself. And I would like to have that.
I think Captain Landers answered that question. But at this point, I want to thank, and I know you guys have been really, it's an important issue to you because it's so personal, and for some of you it's very close. And I want to thank you for...
25 miles.
Exactly.
Less than half a mile.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I do want to thank...
I just tried in 30 seconds.
But I do want to thank on my behalf, and as a state representative, for the 5 people that came here tonight and took a lot of your questions, whether you might have agreed with them or not. I want to thank them for their attendance here tonight at tonight's meeting. I want to thank you all, and I think that perhaps there might be in the future a bi-state effort in order to support the claims that you have, because this is really a community issue, not so much a state issue. And I want to thank you for the privilege of being able to host this meeting for you tonight, and I hope that perhaps our paths will cross again in the future, and we work together on this issue. Thank you.